Consider your hair journey and from whence you've come. Have you always felt good about being in your natural hair? Do you remember a time in the years previous to now, 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years ago, where you would never have stepped into a natural hair care style? Consider the context in which you held those views, or if you didn't hold those views, consider the context in which maybe you were reared. How did your mother pass on how she felt about hair, her natural hair, our blackness onto you? What about your grandmother? What has changed since that time, and what attitudes do you sport today? Let's get into it. Welcome to Tunisia's Locs, Beauty Tips and Potpourri, the channel where we get it all in. You can also learn more about the I Am Melanin Magic brand. Thank you for stopping by. Experience the I Am Melanin Magic difference by going to our website www.IamMelaninMagic.com and purchasing your products today. I Am Melanin Magic, and so are you. I Am Melanin Magic's fragrance bombs are explosive. Get your charcoal. Make sure you heat it on a heat source long enough so that the charcoal turns gray on all 4 sides before you place any of the incense, bahor, or unsi on top of the charcoal. Take a small piece, if not the entire ball, take a small piece of your fragrance bomb. And as you break off that small piece, place it on the gray charcoal and enjoy the concentrated aromatics, fragrances, and natural ingredients. Our fragrance bombs are the bomb. Use in a ventilated area and use when you need fragrance all over your space. Feminize and romanticize. I Am Melanin Magic. Hello, and welcome to Tunisia's Locs, Beauty Tips and Potpourri. I hope that this message is finding any of you that are watching it in a peaceful place, in a productive place, that you feel as though you're living positively in your passion and in your power, most definitely on purpose. It is Wednesday evening, all of you beautiful butterflies, and we are digging back into that hair thing by Mrs. Joanne Cornwell. So if you want to stick around while we explore the next chapter, which I believe is chapter 4, based upon where we stopped last week. Yes, this chapter is called The Conspiracy of Silence, and it's quite a long chapter, so I'm going to break it into 2 parts. Don't forget to, right now, while you are sitting here looking at this video and looking at me and valuing the content here on the channel, if you're going to stick around and watch the video, please do your part and give back by giving the video a thumbs up. You can also share the video, and you can comment. I would love for you to comment. And what I would like for you to comment on are either of these things, either of these questions. The first being, what meanings are assigned to naturally textured hair? And we're talking about the meanings today that you think still exist that are assigned to naturally textured hair as it relates to people of the African diaspora, in particular people in America. The other question I want to ask you is, because this is a very, very interesting chapter, where did these meanings come from? And what is it about these meanings that continue to make our hair a topic of a closed topic for discussion now? I don't feel that that is as pertinent as it was back when she wrote this book in the late 90s, because we have ushered in a different aspect of hair evolution and personal senses of identity. But we do still have pockets of people in our community who suffer from an identity crisis when it comes to their hair and don't even know why, don't know where it comes from, and don't associate it with anything that is lacking within them at a deeper level in a conscious way, and don't understand that subconsciously that is impacting them in their life in a very meaningful way. So again, the questions would be, what are the meanings that are assigned to natural hair? Where did they come from? And what is it about these meanings that make hair such a closed topic in our community. And I guess what she's saying is there were times in previous decades, and perhaps even now, but I definitely don't think to the same extent, if it exists, where we didn't really talk about hair. We didn't talk about the fact that our hair was naturally textured rather than straight, and you know, that there were certain things that we ran into as a result of that. We tended to be handicapped by something that was so beautiful in our hair, in our not claiming it. We tended to be almost weighed down and burdened, or as she mentions in this chapter, as Alice Walker referred to in one of her poems or in a statement, that our hair was oppressed. And when you think about that, that's a really deep statement. Our hair was actually oppressed, and our hair was oppressed because there were times where we had to erase certain aspects of our unique culture, but then there became a time where, and we had to do that for survival, but then there became a time where we took up the banner and we wore that torch and we erased those aspects of our cultural identity by choice, not even understanding where it came from and that it was a problem. So let's say the first people that began to do that did it as a matter of survival. And as the generations went on and as time went on, those people who took that banner up began to see straightness, for example. Let's say if you were getting a perm, as that was the only option that you had. And to do anything less was, oh my God, like, you're gonna wear your hair like that? You're gonna do what? What do you mean you're not gonna get another relaxer? Or what are you gonna do with your hair? You're not coming anywhere with me, that sort of thing. And so we began to become separated from a very important part of our identity. And I don't know how many people really understand what that did to us as a people in terms of being able to claim or to reclaim our identity, or to stand in who we are without feeling some sort of inferiority, because that's how that came about. Is you have to erase your culture as a necessity, as a financial, socioeconomic necessity, and then you get into a place where what it is that you embrace as the alternative becomes something better than what you actually are in a natural way. And so you begin to then ascribe to, or to assimilate in your beauty standards, and in many other ways, because if you're doing it in your beauty standards, you're also going to be doing it in other ways, even if you don't realize it. But you begin to assimilate to the so-called dominant culture, and your beauty standards become warped, and they become very much separated from the reality of who you actually are. And in your separating that, there's also some other ethnic cleansing that occurs that you might not even realize. And I think that's a very thought-provoking topic to get into, because when you begin to do that and you assume the position, then the first thing you go to is the standard of beauty that you've been given, which means anything that is of you that is not naturally the standard of beauty in someone else's eyes has to be changed. So over time, you no longer accept the most intimate part of yourself as anything that's worthy. So you literally become confused. You become, how you feeling, Miss Sophia? Confused. You literally become confused, and it's important to understand what that does to the psyche, and how that's just one of the many ways that African people, or people of the African diaspora, in particular African Americans or Black people, have been stripped of something that, if you don't recognize what that being stripped of, that something, not just this beauty standard business we're talking about, or our hair, if you don't realize how that plays out, you may not understand any of the pandemonium and the dysfunction and the crazation that's going on out here today with Black people. You won't understand where it comes from. And then all sorts of cultural practices and ways of being and behaviors and things that have visited transgenerational trauma on us as a people. And oftentimes, if you don't sit down and think about where this stuff comes from, or if you don't look into it, or you don't have an inquiring mind, you may never understand where some of this stuff comes from. The most basic of things, some of the relationships that mothers and daughters have, some of the ways that parents may talk to their children when they're in stores, mothers may talk to their children when they're in stores, the way that African-American children don't grow up with the sense of entitlement and the same level of confidence in some instances as our white counterparts, because of the ways that we were reared, which were a function of survival, which were inherited. So even if you weren't living at that time, you inherited something, not just in habitual practice and genetics, but your very DNA, the energy of your experience, your collective experience is mired in all of this stuff. So I digress, but this chapter is very interesting, and I just kind of want to, remember I said that I was going to paraphrase because I cannot read directly from the book. But this chapter is really about how the hair thing, which is the name of the book, that hair thing brings up serious self-identity issues. And I guess when you look back to where you were before you decided to get locks, go back 5 years, go back 10 years, and ask yourself, how did I really feel about natural hair? What is it that caused me to choose the Sisterlocks instead of going with traditional locks or freeform locks? Ask yourself and continue to go back and ask why, and see if you can't get at perhaps whether or not at any point in time you were either worried about what your own people would think, your own family. You may have been worried about how you would be perceived maybe in the workplace, or you yourself did not quite feel comfortable with your quote-unquote blackness at that particular time. So she talks about this lack of meaningful communication around things that are different in our society. Now, we know that we have been the trailblazers and the pioneers for bringing discussions to the table around meaningful cultural and social differences, and we have done that. We have begun that process, and we have been the trailblazers and spearheaded discussions, and in some cases we have just outright decided to dispense with trying to be like other people and to reclaim the beauty of who we actually are. And I love this because she says something in this chapter, and I'm gonna go ahead just a bit, where she talks about while we had many people who had bought into the straight hair myth, we had another faction of women and men also who had not brought into and were not interested in the black hair myth. And the words that we might would use, kinky, as she mentioned, nappy, fuzzy, excessively curly, or get this one, can't you comb me type hair, was insufficient for qualifying and describing the beauty, the lushness, and the versatility of the quality of hair that is ours, that is natural. And I said that in one of my last video on my hair journey. I probably should. It was really a socio-political discussion in a sense, very lightly. I probably should have changed the title because it could be misleading, but it does talk about my overall journey. And I remember in that video making reference to this aspect of myself that I claimed as my locks began to change. And somehow naively, initially going in, I thought they were going to look like they did during the first few months. And as they began to change and they began to look more like this, naturally here now they are compressed. They have compressed, so they look a little bit different. But before they were compressing, but you could still see the fuzziness and all of that. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, these look like locks, like locks, I don't know if I like the way these look. But at the same time, that's what my hair was doing. But there was something about that was new to me, and there was something about that I didn't quite like. So when I go back and I dig and I look into that and I ask myself very honest questions, and I say to myself, well, what was that about? Was that because I was used to seeing myself look a certain way? Was it because I was worried about what other people would think? Or was it because I didn't like the naturalness of my hair? Now, before I got the Sisterlocks, my hair was growing in a natural style. I was doing the twist, and I actually loved the way my hair looked. But it has been an evolution, because I'll tell you this, the person that I am today, that I've embraced more of as a result of the hair journey, and I'm not talking about an identity crisis at that level, because I didn't grow up with an identity. I grew up with parents who were part of Black Power movement, and I can get into that all day long. So I was a rebel, especially in college and in my 30s. Thank goodness I had to remove myself from some of the. I digress. So it wasn't an identity thing, but there was something that was going on there, because as I evolved based on who I am today, had I never had the benefit of getting these locks, I'd probably have an afro out to here. I'd be wearing my natural hair, just based on the sheer number of women that I see out here looking so beautiful in our glory, and that sort of synthesis and that evolution that has taken place in me over time, where I see me differently, I see us differently, and I've always gazed upon our beauty. I've always felt that our beauty, was superior. We represent all races. You can find people that look like the Asians within us. You can find people that look like Caucasian within us, feature-wise. We have such a wide range that it's like a one-stop shop. You can get anything in the African diaspora, but it's something even more depthful, more essential, and more, I don't even know what the word is. It's basic, it's instinctual. It is the very essence of a thing at its smallest level, at the quantum level, I'm going to say, that is so amazing. And taking this hair care journey, or getting the Sisterlocks installed, moved me more and more into who I really am, which I didn't realize I was escaping as long as I was putting those perms in. As long as the box braids weren't a big deal. But when I was doing the hair weaves and I was buying other people's hair to put in my hair to look a certain way, even though I might have had shoulder length hair, but I didn't see it that way at the time. But now I can't envision ever doing that ever again, at least where I am now, unless there were some medical reason for it. I know that I would always be looking for, what ways can I exploit my natural hair? What else can I do to accentuate my natural beauty and the beauty of these locks, which is our natural beauty? So I found that discussion very interesting, and she goes back to Western regions of Africa to study and to bring awareness to the fact of how hair was not only seen as an adornment, to try and contrast this secrecy around the issues of hair and this lack of wanting to identify with your naturally textured hair. She wants to give a contrast, and she goes back to the motherland to look at the way that hair was, oh my gosh, didn't just carry a superficial meaning. It was an aspect of your adornment that carried meanings with regard to marriage, meanings with regard to your socio-economic status, cultural traditions, rituals, coming of age ceremonies, and so forth and so on, that promoted self-expression, but also group expression. So in addition to some of these pictures here, she talked about, for example, your hair might be an expression of your spirituality, your political orientation, whether or not you were married, and even your marital standard. And in fact, there were certain hairstyles in certain cultural regions that you could not even wear until you became a certain age. So at age 7 to 10, for example, you had access to these particular hairstyles. And then when you came of age from 11 to maybe 17, you had access to another group of hairstyles. So I found that very, very interesting. But again, it is this need to reclaim your hair, and allowing your hair to be a unique expression of who you are, and a way that you can construct meaningful statements about who you are in the world and your own individuality. So I thought that was very interesting. I really love this. It's a longer chapter, but I do want to read this part here. It says, how did the ways of making statements with our hair in our original cultures, positive statements about ourselves and our world, get reduced to one really crass, brutalizing message? A message that was actually imprinted on our cultural psyche and, believe it or not, still remains today. You have women today who see this more as a hairstyle when they may look at us and not associate this with the fact that, by and large, although this is a hairstyle, I tend to feel like it's a political statement, whether you realize it or not. It says, I love me. It says, this is what my hair does, without resorting to your chemicals or what you feel styling standards are, and so forth and so on. That the kink in my hair is absolutely beautiful, and that the kink in my hair gives me a beauty edge, because the kink in my hair allows me to do anything I want to do with my hair, whether I want to straighten it, whether I want to wear it braided, cornrow, plaited, sister locked, traditionally locked, freeform locked, and whatever the other millions of different styles are that we have for our hair. I thought that that was a very interesting statement, because she says, quotations, quote, our hair type is a visible indication that we are inferior beings. That is what was printed on our psyche. So we had this shame around our hair. We had this shame around what was going to happen if you jumped into the pool. I think you probably seen a few movies. There was a movie, I think, with maybe Sanaa Lathan and the chick who was in, I can't mean to say the chick, but the lady who was in A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, that Martin Lawrence ran in, was in the movie with, I can't think of her name. One of my favorite actresses, though. But I think there was a movie she was in, and she played Sanaa Lathan's mother, and Sanaa revisited some of the trauma that she had growing up, because she wanted to swim, and I think either she jumped into the pool and her mother snatched her up out of the pool because her hair was starting to draw up. It was just a spectacle around that was just unreal. And I think a lot of us, if you can't identify with it at that extreme, you may be able to identify with it at other levels, worrying about your hair and what was it going to do if it rained or if it became humid, as if the fact that your hair was just going to revert back to its home place or its default was so god awful. So, you know, that lets you know how that message was bred into our psyche and was actually revisited again and again and again as a form of a transgenerational trauma. And that's what I'm calling it. But it just reemphasizes the fact that reemphasizes the fact that there were no positive references to our hair anywhere in the literature, anywhere, and that we were stripped of that, and then we were made to feel our hair was a source of shame. And then we revisited that same trauma on one another, and many women today, as I go back to and tie that point in, don't realize that some of what they're doing with their hair has to do with them running away from who they really are. Now, it'd be a different story if I decided to cut this off tomorrow or pin it up and put on a wig because I want to look a certain way. You can put art on your face, you can put on wigs, you can put a weave in, you can do all of those things, but are you doing it as a form of unique expression, or are you doing it to run away from your natural hair? I think that there's a difference between those of us who do it as a form of art in the same way we may wear a different color lipstick, and those of us who do it to hide who we are, or do it to run away from who we are, or do it because we don't want to deal with ourselves. It's similar to saying, I'm not going to date this group of people. I don't like them. This is where I want to go. That's the same as you saying, I don't want to deal with my hair. It doesn't want to do what I ask it to do. I don't like it. Let me just go put this wig and cover myself up. That's a problem. That's a problem. And that is one of the reasons why, for me, with this journey, when you get the Sisterlocks or the Microlocks or whatever else, I think it's therapeutic to go through each stage without embellishing. I think that if your hair looks a certain way And this is just my personal view, and you don't have to agree with me, but I think there's benefit in not doing any extensions and not doing any of that and letting your hair look like it looks, which will make you feel uncomfortable, which will give you a greater degree of opportunity or open up a segue for you to claim more of who you are. When my hair started doing all this crazy stuff and I didn't like the way it looked, I could have been, it wasn't just outside, because most of the time I wore my hair covered back then. It was when I would take my scarf off and I would look, and I didn't like the way it looked. But in my not liking the way it looked, I didn't like me. I didn't like me. And that's what I had to grow to realize. And that's what I grew to understand, that there were aspects of me that the hair was just a cover for, that I needed to address. But then there were also aspects of me and my hair that I needed to address that were a part of me, my blackness and my naturally textured hair, that I needed to grow to love again. Because after years of perming and having straight hair, I didn't know how to look at myself with kinky hair. So these are all very important things, and I love this chapter here. I think it's a very, very good chapter. And she's asking another question: what do you think things were like before Black women's hair got oppressed? And when you think about oppressed, what does black hair being oppressed mean to you? Put it in the comments. What does black hair being oppressed mean to you? Because think about it. The hair is oppressed when it can't express itself. When your kinks have to be straightened out and braided back and hidden under a wig or chemical relaxers or whatever it is that you may be doing, your hair is not just, it's physically stressed. It's mentally stressed in a sense, because you are. It's emotionally stressed, but the hair in and of itself is being oppressed because it is not being allowed to curl, to kink, to do all the things that your hair should be free to do, even grow in the direction that it wants to grow in, because you are busy building a flower bed and putting a barrier up and pulling this and pulling that and trying to get this straight and putting you know how when we're trying to push back nature and vegetation, we do all this stuff. We put fertilizers down, we put weed killers down. We go in and we pull weeds, we trim with the weed trimmers. We want the edges straight. We don't just let nature do what nature is supposed to do. And in doing those things, we prevent some things. We hurt some aspects of the environment. We poison the soil. We kill the animals because we're trying to get rid of pests. So that part of the earth is somehow being held captive. So your hair has been oppressed. If you haven't come out from under some of this crisis of self-identity, and you have to ask yourself, what is it that I need to do to get closer to who I am? Or what is it that I need to really consider in asking myself, do I have some aspect of an identity crisis? And if I do, where does that come from? When did it begin? And how can I slowly begin to come out of that to embrace more of myself? Because while this was written, I think in 96 or 97, I don't think for one second that it doesn't have some applicability today, because we still live in a society where, although the media is shifting somewhat and we have our own channels of cultural channels and so forth and so on, and we see more people of color in the media, you are still, and I love it when I see sisters with their braids and their natural hairstyles on these media channels, on these smaller channels. People are walking out into the world being just who they want to be. And I believe that is what has allowed more people, even doctors, white and black and any other color, to begin to wear their cultural stuff and to be who they want to be in the workplace. And now people tend to more or less go into their professional spaces with a greater degree of individual expression than was before. And I think that, like many things that we have been pioneers in, we by and large initiated and were the catalyst of that personal ability to have that freedom to express oneself. And so we need to reclaim more of that, and we need to be able to understand when we're in spaces where we don't really have that this is something to be beautiful, to be proud of, because it is so beautiful, and you have such privilege as a woman of African descent, you are so beautiful, you are so rich, you are so freaking amazing. And no one has to understand that more than you do. And in fact, you are the most desired woman on the planet. And if you don't realize that, then you have a problem, and you are looking at what society is feeding you instead of the truth. So this is just amazing. It's beautiful. But I loved this chapter. She's going to go into, and what I'm going to go into in the next aspect is a bit of history to put this negative transformation into context. So she's going to go back some, and she's going to give us where this history of this inability to be empowered by our physicalness or our physicality, where this actually came from. And I think that the social pressure and maybe certain aspects of legislation and so forth, and its discussion within the context of the effect that this has had on African American women will be very interesting as she deals with some of those past wounds and exploring at this particular time when she was writing the book, I think in 96 or 97, what was actually still present. But the part that we need to take responsibility for is the part that we revisit on our brothers and sisters. And I know that's none of us. Any of us who I'm preaching to the choir who are watching this video probably can't relate because we're not in that space anymore. That's why I'm asking you to go back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Go back even to when you were a child. I remember my mom combing our hair and plaiting our hair. I also remember getting it washed, blow dried, and pressed on the weekends. Not every weekend, but on the weekends. I also remember getting relaxers very early on. And when I didn't get the relaxer, at one point I remember getting a jerry curl. And then when that did what it was going to do, I think I then transitioned to something else that was natural to try to straighten the hair. But after a certain age, it was like you couldn't do the plaits anymore. You had to have something to make the hair lay down. I just remember after that period of beginning to get perms, I continued to have perm after perm after perm after perm, and then went through that space where I began to wear braids, and I began to put the extensions in and do the box braids. And then after that, I began to do the weaves, and I would vacillate back and forth from the weaves to the braided styles. And then eventually I would let my hair grow out again, but then I would go back to the perm. And it wasn't until having the perm and doing the henna and the color and all of my hair came out that I decided to return to my roots. But it happened not by choice. It happened as a response to hair trauma, but it turned out to be the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me in terms of my outward expression. I believe I'm far more beautiful now than I ever was physically because of my hair, not because of the way it looks, but because of what it says about me and the pride that I carry with me with my Sisterlocks. It's a statement that I'm making that feels good all the way to the core. I don't just love me, I love all of me. And this actually is me. And this is the most natural and essential aspect of who I am. So I'm grateful for Sisterlocks. I'm grateful for Microlocks. I'm grateful that those people that came before us, that were the trailblazers, that brought this to us, including Mrs. Joanne Cornwell, were a part of a movement that gave birth to something today that I wear as a banner of pride, and as many of you do as well. So that part of the history is very important. So we will finish the next part of this next time around. I've loved having you with me today, and I can't wait to see you again next time. For those of you all who are watching this, don't forget to share, like, and to subscribe, and don't forget to go on over to IamMelaninMagic.com and get your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hair oil that will strengthen your hair, or your magical hair growth serum that will fill in those spots where your hair is struggling. Remember, this is not for the hair, it's only for the scalp. This can be on your scalp and your hair, and it is antifungal, antibacterial. It's a detangler and so many other things. Again, you can find the information for that in the description. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for everything that you do for the channel. I love your comments. Please share some of your comments in the comment section for the video regarding this particular discussion that we had. Share anything that you find meaningful. It can be a reaction. It can be an answer to any of those questions. It may be something else entirely. But I do appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Continue to be peaceful, productive, prosperous, living passionately and in your power. I'll see you again soon. Hey ladies, do you love the way your skin looks and feels? I know I do, because I am using the I Am Melanin Magic Anti-Aging Serum, and at 50, I love the way my skin looks and feels. This blend is bomb. It renews, revitalizes, rejuvenates, soothes, conditions, moisturizes, tones, brightens, and fades all in one step. So if you're ready to get your glow on, go get you some I Am Melanin Magic Anti-Aging Serum.
If you struggle with acne during your youth or even as an adult, it's time to give I Am Melanin Magic Acne Serum a try. Unlike other harsh products that dry out your skin, our oils balance and purify, helping to heal inflammation. All natural and formulated to meet the requirements of melanated skin. You'll see results in no time. Don't delay. Order yours today.
Do you have dark spots from skin irritation? How about unsightly marks from acne that's lasted way too long? Fade Magic can help you find your way back to radiance over time. Don't delay, order yours today.
If you are not using Melanin Magic Hair Oil, then what are you using?
Hi, I'm the creator of the I Am Melanin Magic Skin and Hair Care brand. The I Am Melanin Magic Hair Oil is our premier product. It is the leading high-end supplement for your mane.
It reduces breakage and promotes growth and can be used on all hair types and looks, from straightened hair and microlocks to wigs and protective styles.
It's antifungal, antibacterial, and it's anti-funk, so you know you're protected.
It softens and conditions your hair, and it's anti-frizz too.
Hey guys, so I started using this oil called I Am Melanin Magic since February of this year, and check out the new growth. Like, it's insane. Not only did it help with my new growth, but it smells amazing too.
See the dramatic improvements Denisha has made after not having hair around her edges for 3 years.
Tanya's hair had been like this for almost 20 years, and while getting injections. Her doctor said it was scarred and would never grow back. After 4 weeks of using I Am Melanin Magic, this is what she looked like. I Am Melanin Magic did this to Danette's hair after a short time. This is really all your hair needs. It's rich with antioxidants, loaded with growth-promoting ingredients. Look at the growth of my hair. It's amazing. The product speaks for itself. Order yours today and don't delay. Don't delay. Purchase yours today.
I Am Melanin Magic, and so are you.